All right, remember the goal of the European explorations was God, gold, and glory. Well, part of that, the gold and glory part is they're going to set up trading posts all over the world. Here are some of them that they set up. You can see color coded down here by who is setting up what. And you mainly see in the Indian Ocean, it's the Dutch, it's the British, and it's the Portuguese. The Portuguese don't really want to conquer. They just want to build trading sites throughout. The first one they built in Calcutta, 1498 with the Gama. They want all the spices in India. They want the slaves from Africa, gold trade in Mozambique. Um, they are going to get a little further east there into the Strait of Malacca to control the shipping lanes from the Indian Ocean into the South China Sea. And they basically use land cannons to make sure merchants had safe passage. That's basically what they're doing. They want their merchants to have safe passages. They are what's called safe conduct passages. And so the Portuguese are basically forcing people to play by their rules for a time period, and the Portuguese would confiscate any cargo or people who do not have these safe conduct passes, and sometimes they'd even execute them. The Portuguese never controlled the Red Sea, but they do control a lot of the Indian Ocean trade. However, Portugal just cannot sustain this. They're just flat out not big enough. They have 1 million people in 1500, so they have to supplement with people from other countries and come back, and then investors would go set up expeditions with them. And it doesn't, I mean, Portugal just doesn't have the manpower, basically, is what you're getting at. And so the Portuguese trading empire only is going to last for about 100 years or so. They're able to keep trading posts. Goa stays Portuguese, but they're going to lose to the English and the Dutch, who start to do things faster and cheaper and more powerful than what the Portuguese were. The English are going to build trading posts in Bombay and Calcutta. The Dutch build one in Cape Town and Colombo and modern day Jakarta. The biggest thing that the English and Dutch do is they create these rival trading networks. And what they are is the English East India Company and the United East India Company, aka the VOC. The VOC is Dutch, and the English East India Company is obviously English. Basically, what it is that private merchants would advance funds and private merchants would work with the government to advance funds, outfit the ships and crews and commodities for trade. The government supports them, but in the end, they're very privately funded. But the government will give them safe passages. The government will give them some funds to work with and ships. But in the end, basically the private citizen has all the risk here. But it's very, 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 very profitable to the point. Let me show you this slide right here. This is the Dutch company. This is the Dutch company here in 1637. They were worth $7.9 trillion with inflation included there. Here are all the companies that would be the same value. Apple, Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Bank of America, Berkshire Hathaway, Wells Fargo, Samsung. There's a lot here. These companies are incredibly valuable and incredibly making a ton of money. Okay, the Europeans are going to start to conquer Southeast Asia. The main city here of note is Manila. Manila was a huge multicultural city with a Muslim population, a huge Chinese population. The Europeans are to come there as well. Silk, this basically became the trading hub, and the main boat used is the Manila galleons. Spanish and Filipinos are here, mainly because of the Manila galleons. What the Spanish would do is the Spanish would take silver from the Western Hemisphere, and they would send it to Manila as a stopping point before China and whatnot, because the Chinese would send their products here. So you see silk, mainly, and porcelain making their way to Manila. Spain would send silver. Now, Manila as a whole, like I said, very multicultural city. They are very suspicious of the Chinese. The Spanish and the Filipino residents actually massacre the Chinese for a time because of suspicion of their actions. There were battles that broke out in 1603, 1639, 1662, 1668. I mean, there are more too that they go a ton on there. Eventually, the Spanish are going to send Jesuits there, and it will become Christian over time. But Manila is the place to go. And this just also emphasizes that once they're in Manila, then you have the Dutch. The Dutch are involved too, because now the Dutch with their VOC company, they want to trade all those spices, cloves, nutmeg, and they are going to make it there. And they control more or less Indonesia, but they will have a little bit of a trading network into Manila. The VOC controls all parts of Indonesia. Notice that the VOC, not the Dutch government, they are incredibly powerful, this VOC. They're going to make alliances with local people, and they basically, anybody who didn't go after them, they would flat out conquer you because the VOC had these. Basically, the Dutch are looking out for them. And so basically what you're looking at here is that Southeast Asia is going to get conquered by the Europeans, whether that is the Spanish, essentially, and then also the Dutch. Should have showed you this route before. This is the Manila Galleons. Manila Galleons going from the west coast of the Western Hemisphere, and they are going to go to Manila. These boats are sleek, they're fast, they're heavily armed, and they're going from places like Acapulco and Lima to Manila. Asian luxury goods in exchange for silver. This is a huge change because before this, you really didn't have any goods that the Chinese wanted, but they get addicted to silver to the point that it becomes currency throughout China. They would get the Chinese silver for Chinese gold. I mean, its trade is incredibly profitable for the Spanish. These Manila galleons are a huge part of the reason why. One more trading post empire here. This is the Russians. They're going to control the Volga River, and they are going to offer trade with the Ottomans, the Iranians, which are the Persians at this point, and the Indians, and will eventually expand into the Caucasus Mountain region as well. The trading posts for these guys are further east. The Stroganov family leads expeditions into modern-day Siberia in 1581, and by 1639 had made it all the way to the Pacific Oceans. The Russians extract tribute from anybody in Siberia and anybody else who would trade with them. There's some conflict with Russian princes goes on. But what you're looking here is that you really start to have people that start to really assimilate themselves into the Russian mindset. They convert some people to Orthodoxy, and if they don't, they don't want any business with you. And that's where the assimilation of small peoples, that was the Russian term, for these just kind of people out in Siberia, it's going to fail. But they really didn't care because they didn't have a lot to do because the Russian population is going to start to move there. They start to move people there, and they start building small farming communities and trading posts to mine silver and gold and copper. So in other words, what you see is the Russians are slowly but surely going to be expanding their influence. When you have all this stuff going on, that of course is going to build into rivalries, whether that is the Dutch taking out the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. The English and the French are the other ones. And the big thing to realize here is the 7 Years' War. The 7 Years' War is a battle between the British and the French, essentially. But in America, it's typically called the French and Indian War. 7 Years' War lasted 7 years. It's global conflict in Europe, India, the Caribbean, North America, Asia, and throughout. It's basically a war for empire that the French were fighting the British, and they always have been. And the French are going to be allowed to keep some of their Caribbean possessions. And you can see here, these are all the participants in the war itself. I mean, the French had set up their colonies, the British have set up theirs, the Portuguese have set up theirs. But in the end, it is the British. It's the British that win. And the key point to that is, we could talk way more about the details of it, but our key point is this: the British win. What sets up the British hegemony. British hegemony is set up, and the British are going to start to control the world after this 7 Years' War is over. And they're going to control most of world trade after.